What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the Kumite Lifestyle, where the mat meets the mic. I'm your host, Nick Arndt, and I appreciate you tapping in for another episode. Whether you're watching us on YouTube, listening on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or streaming the show on your favorite podcast platform, thank you for being here and supporting what we're building. Every view, every listen, every follow, every comment, every review, and every share helps this podcast continue to grow and reach more people. If you're new here, this show is all about real conversations, real stories, and real people doing meaningful things. And if you've been rocking with us already, you know what time it is. Before we get into it, make sure you subscribe on YouTube, follow the podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, leave a rating or review, and share this episode with somebody who needs to hear it. Now, let's get right into this amazing conversation. What's up, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Kumite Lifestyle Podcast, where the mat meets the mic. And today we are joined by none other than Kael Howell. And for those that have been watching the podcast and following along, I had Kael's father, Coach Kurt Howell, legendary coach and wrestler from Delaware. So it's only fitting that I bring his son Kael on. And just to give the viewers some context for those either watching or listening, we had a chance to connect first time recently at the 2026 Final X in New Jersey.
That's right.
Yeah, so that was a lot of fun. So, first, welcome to the show. And how's it going today, bro?
It's going pretty good. I mean, can't complain. Nice day outside. In the middle of working Ken Shirto's camp, so I'm in between sessions for that. So I came over here to hop on the podcast.
Very cool. And we appreciate you hopping on and giving us your time. I know you're a busy man, especially since you're at a camp. Wow. So you're at a camp right now. So are you one of the guest clinicians? So what's your involvement with the Kent Shirthouse?
So I'm just like a, how do I word this? I would say a counselor. This year I was lucky enough to at Spooky Nook. So my apartment's 15 minutes away. So he gave me the okay just to sleep in my own bed and wake up and just go coach wrestling and come back. I know last year it was like 5-hour drive, hotel room, like staying in a hotel for 2 weeks, and so it's a lot nicer to be able to stay in my apartment and just go and teach wrestling.
Yeah, absolutely, man. I think that's awesome that you get a chance to do what you love. Now, when you say camp counselors, so it's interesting you say that. I remember, flipping through the old USA Wrestling magazines, and I see posters and, not posters, but posts, if you will, from other wrestlers and other camps from around the country. And I do see the word camp counselor often advertised, especially for the wrestlers that are there. So what are your responsibilities as a camp counselor?
So, I mean, like the first main thing that everyone thinks about is like coaching, just making sure techniques in tune with everything. I like to think that as a counselor, I'm also there just for the kids. Some of them are little kids who, are not used to being away from their parents for, it's like a 4-day, 11-day, 14-day camp. So you got like those kids, and then it's just making sure that like they're having a good time. You don't want to have a kid who's just is going to end up hating wrestling because he doesn't want to be there. So I take it more. It's just making sure the kids are happy, enjoying themselves, having a good time, as well as learning some good wrestling.
Yeah, and Kent Shirthouse, that's a name that's been around for a long time. So just to give the viewers some context on him, so obviously you have USA Wrestling and all the great studs that are evolving and representing us now. And we had a chance to see who just made it onto the world team. But, from your own viewpoint, man, like how would you best describe Kent Shirthouse and what's your relationship with him or the family?
So I don't know. I'd say he's pretty intense. He's not afraid to go out there and get on the mat himself. I don't know how old he is, but I know he's intense. He's like showing lat drops and he's, doing all that stuff. And, basically, I didn't go to his camp growing up, actually. I never went. My dad and I are NCAAs. We run into him. And I was just talking to my dad, using the networking that I'm available with. I was like, I just want to like start like coaching, get into coaching more, like start doing that. I work, Howell camp, my dad's camp, family camp. Yeah. But I just wanted to do more, do really nothing over the summers. I work, occasionally, but I like to do wrestling more than what I do is working at retail. But so we go and he's like, so Ken was from West Virginia and the Howells were from Delaware. And in that time, both of those states never really had national teams. So I believe when they were out in Fargo, it was not Fargo back then. It was in Iowa. It was just the junior nationals. I believe. I'm not too certain, so don't quote me. But I'm pretty sure my grandfather sat in on Ken's corner a couple of times. And then later down the line, when he was at Penn State, my uncle Dickie was wrestling at Lock Haven. And so him and Shurto wrestled each other a couple times there. So he knew the family. He knew it was a wrestling family. So I talked to him. I was like, hey, can I get a job coaching wrestling? I know a couple techniques. So he's always eager to get staff on. So, it was perfect. So I just started working at camp last year. It was my first year. So I'm in my second year. But it was just pretty simple.
Man, that's so awesome to hear. It's kind of proof, right? Like that domino effect that we talk about. Mm-hmm. So had your father and your uncles, just your older family members that you mentioned had not made that connection with Ken Chertow, who knows if you would be here as far as working his camp and being involved with that. So I think that's pretty special. And that was something that you and I talked about at Final X. I know you had mentioned that your dad's name, just his legacy and just over the years and, being able to network, if you will. So I would love to know, man, just, growing up in the how household, anytime you travel to an event or if you registered your name, because I remember you mentioning that folks would come up to you and say, all right, which how are you? Or things.
Yeah. So like that story was last year at Shurto's camp. It was the Bonomo brothers who both wrestled at Bloomsburg. One of them was a couple-time national champ, but I was working and he came up to me and goes, Hal? I was like, yeah. Like from Delaware? I was like, yeah. So like, which one do you belong to? Because I believe Rocky wrestled Dickie and Ricky wrestled my dad one time. So they both were familiar with like the how. So I thought it was just like funny. But like tournament wise, like especially in Delaware, it was a lot of it was nice. It was fun to see everyone like come up and talk to him because it's like always a new story with him. But excuse me. I'd say it was honestly like nothing crazy, like people come to me like, oh, I wrestled for you, talking, asking how he's doing. But I remember him still being very locked in with, just sitting in my corner. Like he never missed out on my corner all the way through high school. I mean, even in the state tournament, he was in my corner all the off season. So that never really affected him, but it was always cool to see that. And then I used to play baseball. And he said he always loved going to the baseball tournaments because he wasn't Kurt Howell. He's just a dad.
Yeah.
So he's like baseball tournaments was a time where you can just sit and watch and not have to talk to a lot of people. And he loves talking to people. You can go up to him, talk to him. He'll talk your ear off for hours. You know him, man. But he's always like, dude, these baseball tournaments are awesome. I can just sit and watch and, I can just beat him myself. So it was pretty interesting seeing a bunch of people walk up to him and how he reacts to all that. It's always interesting to see.
Yeah, did he get a chance to see anyone at Final X as you guys were walking around? Did
so many
recognize him?
A couple guys, yeah. Like there's a referee in Jersey named Louie who coached at Clemson. We ran into him. He was talking to him. You guys. Let's see who else. There's a couple Delaware wrestlers that were like there. The one guy, Nate Carr.
Yeah,
Nate Carr's dad. We were walking back to our hotel. Ran into him, and it was so Nate worked one of my dad's camps back in the day, so they were talking about it, which was pretty cool. You got these guys like Nate Carr, and there was the time where NCAA's the year Miles Martin got beat by Bo Nickel in that finals match. I remember him having like a 10-minute conversation with Miles Martin's dad, so it's like pretty cool seeing him know the parents of all these like legends of the sport now.
Yeah, it's a pretty tight-knit community in wrestling that I've seen, especially the East Coast. And I would say just kind of in the area, but obviously the more success you have as a wrestler, the higher that name and the pedigree. And I did, I know this has been kind of a short snippet on your dad so far, but I did want to highlight because, again, for those watching and listening, you can go back and watch the interview that I had with Kurt Howell. Growing up, obviously you knew that he was an amazing wrestler, obviously an amazing dad as well. But when did you at what age did you realize oh crap, like my dad was actually like good? Because, obviously a 1992 Olympic alternate in Greco, an All-American at Clemson. So Kael, I wonder at what age did you when were you able to conceptualize yo, my dad's a beast? You know what I mean?
I want to say probably middle school. I've been around wrestling mats since I was like an infant, but to me, it was always like, oh, he's a coach. He just, but I'd say middle school, I finally like, I get my first phone. I start, looking up random things, like Smyrna wrestling, Kurt Howell wrestling. I read him like, oh my, like he was good. And, but the thing I found out is like, you rarely get it out of him, like you talk to him about wrestling and he'll talk to you about strategy. He'll talk to you about, different moves, but it takes like, it's one of those guys that he'll never talk about his accolades as great as they were. He's just one of those guys that's always about evolving wrestling and like making sure guys are just like his wrestlers are getting better. Not, you go to a practice room and he talks about thinking like a wrestler, doing the hard things or the different techniques. He's never one of those coaches like, 4-time state champ this, All-American that. Like I've never once heard him throw his accolades out, even to like me when we're talking, he just kind of like doesn't like talking about it. So I think that shows who he is.
Yeah. No, that's awesome, man. I appreciate that insight, especially, you being his son and growing up. I'm sure you guys have, I wondered, you guys have like mats in the living room? Is that something you guys had?
Not anymore. I kind of outweigh him now, I got a little weight. I still make jokes though. Him and I, like we just had like a little, I don't know, I guess scrap. We're at his camp and I was messing around with him and dude, he's 50 something. He's tough, dude. Like I try to hold him on his back. He's hitting me with duck unders. I like to say I'll take him down either when he's asleep or he's in a wheelchair. But no, I mean, we have a wrestling room out in our garage. We go out every once in a while. We'd have like little Sunday morning things with Max Agresti, who's a wrestler at Harvard. He wrestled at Salesianum, but he would come down, but not recently. But when I was a kid, though, there was it was always like wrestling in the living room. There was one rule when I was like 7, 8 years old. I was young, and at the time, I just thought it was him being a dad. It was like whenever you're on your back, you get like he would like he'd tickle you, like he'd make sure you're like laughing, screaming. And then fast forward to like 9th grade, he was like, "Well, I had to teach you how to fight off your back somehow." So like, he's the type of dad there was never any pressure. I quit wrestling. So I wrestled when I was like a little kid. I got kicked out for punching a kid in the face, unfortunately. So I got, I took that year off. I came back.
Oh, no.
Didn't like it. I quit for like 2 years, and he'd always be like, hey, you want to wrestle? You want to go to this tournament? But he's never like, he wasn't the type of dad. And it's hard to find somebody like that, especially with the accolades he has, where it's like, you're going to this tournament, blah, blah, blah. He's never like that. It was always, hey, do you want to wrestle? And then eventually when I got to like 6th grade, I was like, yeah, let me wrestle. And I just fell in love with it there. So it's props to him, just let me figure out my way through the sport and not him trying to push me into it.
Yeah, Kael, that's something that you said that can hopefully resonate with the viewers out there. It's easy when you outside looking in, or, if you zoom out and you look at, what your dad's done, your family's done, and then yourself, I think it's a safe assumption to say that most people would assume that, of course Kurt's son's going to wrestle,
Right,
so
yeah.
I think it's cool that, based on what you're saying, that you didn't have that pressure at all. Was there ever any pressure from maybe your peers or like other wrestlers? Did they say, come on, man, you're a Howell, how come you're not wrestling?
So my peers would just make jokes, like, oh, you're Kurt's son, dude, you gotta be good. I think a lot of the pressure was made by myself, like he always just, wanted me, I remember in high school, the goal was just to, get better. What can I do to be a better wrestler? He's always big on not emphasizing winning and losing. Like I just heard somebody say yesterday, and I texted him this last night. It was, it was Nino Bonacorsi. He was being a clinician over at Ken Certo's camp, and he was like, don't let winning and losing feel like weddings and funerals. And I put the pressure on myself to where that was big. Like I don't know. I guess competing with the pressure, I didn't get over it. So probably like my junior year of high school, and I was like, you know what? I'm Kael, not Kurt. I already lost a couple matches. There goes that. So now, like, what is there? But
yeah,
I guess the pressure was there, not put upon by anybody but myself. Sure, a couple of the jokes from the like teammates would be like, yeah, I felt it a little bit, but never any pressure put on him. Mostly on myself, and that was just one of those mental things you have to get through, just something I just had to deal with and overcome it. But I eventually got over it and started competing. And when I started doing that, and, my wrestling went from here to here, just stopped thinking about it, just going on the mat and wrestling, you know.
Very cool. So I know you touched on, I think around sixth grade or middle school was when you started falling.
Yeah, about sixth grade, I got back into it because I wanted to go to the Virginia Beach tournament.
Before we jump back into this conversation, I've got to put you on. The official Kumite Lifestyle shop is open and the merch is ready. We've got shirts, hoodies, hats, accessories available now, and every purchase helps support the show, the content, the guest, and everything we're building. So if you've been enjoying the episodes, this is your chance to support the podcast and look good while doing it. Head on over to kumitelifestyle.com, click the shop, and grab your gear today. Use promo code Kumite, Kumite, and receive a 15% discount for each purchase. Don't just watch the movement, be a part of it.
And I went 0-10, but it was really fun. So I go to the Wildwood tournament and 0-10 again. And then, you know, I started working seriously with my dad. We got in freestyle Greco, started going to schoolboy duels, and then come back in 8th grade and mounds better in those 2 years just from, you know, taking it serious and falling in love with the sport.
Yeah. So I appreciate you being honest and vulnerable as far as your results go, you know, traveling to these tournaments and 0-10. Man, that had to be frustrating, I'm sure, for any competitor, especially being in the household name that you are. So you mentioned sixth grade, you started falling in love with it, but at that point, when you weren't having having that success that you wanted, was there a dropping off point again, or did you let those losses kind of fuel you, if you will?
Well, I mean, I think it was coming from no 11-year-old likes to lose, you know, and then losing 10 times. It was, I definitely didn't want to do it, but my dad would talk to me. He's like, hey, you know, I think I wanted to get good, and he was like, I can get you better, but you gotta completely buy into it. And so honestly, I think at that point I just liked wrestling more than the other sports I play, so I took that seriously. But then I mean, I know we say winning and losing doesn't matter, but then I started locking in. I got better. I started winning. You start to like it more. Unfortunately, it's kind of like how it went for me. But yeah, you know, losing I didn't like it. Even wasn't a fan of it. Even going through high school, you know, losing, I'd lose my head. You know, stupid stuff off the mat when you get off. But that's part of the maturing process. But I wouldn't say it was a turning or not a turning point. What was the word you said? Just motivation. I wouldn't say losing was the motivation because, you know, it was never unless there wasn't full effort, losing in my house was not, oh well, you lost. You know what I mean? The big things was did you try your hardest, you know? Did you try to fight off your back? You know, I was never once scolded for losing. And so, you know, I think him coming with that approach as being a child, you don't understand it at the time, but you know, now it's that's such a great way to have your kid into wrestling. Is you know, who cares about winning and losing? You're not going to win everything, you know, but losing the right way with humility, which I wasn't good at that, not until later, but I'd say just having fun, making sure I was just trying my best. You know, that was trying my best. Back when I was started out when I was little practices or Monday, Wednesday at Smyrna Little Wrestlers. Damian Creighton was our coach. So it was high intense as a young kid. But my dad, every Thursday, that's the last practice of the week, he would watch practice and he'd be like, yeah, if you tried your hardest, you know, he didn't care if I was getting beat up by all the older kids. At that point, it was the Natacola brothers, Gabe Gianpietro, all these big Delaware names. I'd get beat up by all of them. And he'd be like, well, if you tried your hardest, we'll go get a Wendy's Frosty. So every week I'd look forward to the Wendy's Frosty. All I have to do is just try my best, which instilled the winning and losing doesn't matter mindset. You know, it's just if you try your best, try and get a little bit better and slowly stack over, you just get better over time.
Yeah, bro, there's something there that I think is important to also highlight where obviously you've seen in any sport, we see the athletes that, you know, they pick it up pretty easily and then they go off to win. And then it's almost like they don't even have to try. And at the same time, it's well, where's the challenge in that? Where on the flip side, I've noticed that even in just martial arts in general, right? Whether it's karate, jiu-jitsu, or wrestling, I find that the folks that have experienced losses, especially in the beginning, when they do start having success, it means a little bit more. So I find it interesting that for you, it's kind of the case where because winning wasn't something that you were used to in the beginning, it meant a lot more when you did start to win. So now I wonder now, so you had that hump and then you had that conversation with your dad, and I love the approach and the mindset where he said, winning, losing, as long as you're out there improving every day. And that's kind of a notion where I take, that 1% better mindset, if you will. So in eighth grade, because I believe you said it was sixth grade, and then 2 years you kind of made those improvements. When
Yeah,
did you
yeah.
start having that success?
So I would say eighth grade is when I started winning more matches than I was losing, and I'd say like Virginia duels, did well. I wasn't the greatest wrestler even as like the youth. I was decent. I think I was winning like 7 matches, out of the 10 I was getting. Like I was doing well. It was big thing for us that year was going to tournaments outside of Delaware, getting those hard, like wrestling those Jersey guys, those PA guys, like getting matches like that. But eighth grade came around, that was decent. I don't want to. It's like how it's eighth grade. Like winning matches is whatever. And then I'd say I was about an average, maybe a little above average in high school. I wasn't a state champ, semifinalist once or twice. I can't remember, but with that getting better, it's like I don't have the most definitely not the most credentialed in my family for sure, but I really don't have any regrets in my high school career because it was always just about doing the best I could. I can say 90. I'd say from my sophomore year up, I was never really that upset because it was just I gave my all.
Yeah.
Lose matches, you lose matches. How do you react to that? I'd say like my freshman year, I struggled. I was kind of like an in-between guy. The state championship team year where I was in-between guy. I was wherever JT Davis was not. That was my job was, all right, if JT's going 95, I'm wrestling 82. If JT's wrestling 82, I'm going up 95. And I helped us with a couple matches, I did my best, and we ended up winning a state title that year, so that felt really good. But just definitely it was a big just wrestling, never really worried about winning or losing. And then high school, just through high school. So middle school was like, that guy, I guess you can word it like that. And high school, that's when the pressure got put on, and by myself again,
Yeah.
it was just wrestling, just wrestling, I guess is getting better. That was all the main progress was just getting better, winning and losing. Not really.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. I'd like to bounce back real quick before we jump into the high school career, if you will, and because I'd like to know about some of the mindsets, going into the bigger tournaments. If you could look back at that time you went to Virginia Beach and you went 0-10, whether it was 0-10, 0-5, doesn't matter.
Yeah.
But looking back, was there a common theme of how you were wrestling that if you could tell like that version of yourself then, like to fix one or two things in those matches, what would be those adjustments?
Like what adjustments would I make now if I could go back?
Yeah, like looking back, was there something that you were doing? Maybe your stance was off, maybe your shots weren't as committed.
Let me think. I don't know. I wouldn't say. I mean, let's see. I was what, sixth grade, so I was probably 11, 12 years old. So it's like not really physical. I'd say it was just knowing how to like wrestle. I was wrestling like a youth. I wasn't sprawling. Headlocks like.
All the time, right?
I would just say it was the big thing throughout my whole career, no matter what, was mindset. Like, I wish I would have went in with because by the second or third loss, I was like, oh well, let me go out here, get beat, and go home. You know what I mean? I wish I just came with that mindset of like, hey, you know what, I'm 0-2, so what is there to lose? I've already lost twice. Well, I wish I just went out there with that mindset of just wrestling.
Yeah, it's always after the fact.
Yeah, you get older. I mean, and as a kid, not many kids don't have that mindset of like, oh, well, I'm moving too. So, so I think that the mindset was just the biggest thing I'd change if I had to go back to that.
And you had mentioned something where you wanted to get back into wrestling because you wanted to go to Virginia Beach. So did you have a chance to explore Virginia Beach during that time?
Yeah, I think more or less it was I wanted to go away with because all my friends wrestled. I wanted to go away with them, just have fun. I was like, so we'll go have fun. Went with the family. The Garrett Hudson. Oh, sorry, I was turning on my light. Garrett Hudson, is a youth wrestler. He's pretty good. I went with his family. I was just like, go down, have fun. Well, we ran around the beach, wreaked havoc in the hotels. You know how it is when you're a kid in the youth wrestling spot. But I did explore Virginia Beach. I remember I was with Garrett Hudson. We went to Dairy Queen, and the big thing was my first time having a blizzard, and they turned it upside down and gave it to me. I thought it was the coolest thing ever. So I was like, "Yo, look at this! This is sick!" And then boom, right onto the ground. I was so upset. Yeah. So I mean, definitely great memories from those tournaments as well.
Yeah, I think that's one of the biggest takeaways for athletes in sports is aside from the competition, it's the road trips and the memories, like you're saying.
Oh yeah.
So yeah, man, that's awesome. And I know that's something that has also transcended into your high school career. So, all right, so now you're in high school, right? You're wrestling for Smyrna. Was your dad the coach at the time, or did
no? So he stepped down. He wasn't the head coach. He stepped down my 8th grade year. My head coach was Aaron Harris. He was
yep.
Excuse me.
He was from Dover.
Yeah, CR. We wrestled at CR. He wrestled for Dickey.
He coached at Dover. I'm sorry.
He coached at Dover. Came to Smyrna. My dad stepped down.
This part of the episode could be sponsored by you. If you're a business owner, creator, entrepreneur, brand, or organization looking to get in front of the engaged audience, this is your opportunity. Kumite Lifestyle is growing, and we're always looking to partner with people who are doing good work and want to connect with the community. To sponsor an episode or to learn more, visit kumitelifestyle.com or reach out directly. Let's build something together. Now, back to the episode.
And coached 2 state championship teams. It was definitely I think it was best. I thought at the time was that, it's like, I could have my dad as a coach, but he was a volunteer. So he'd come in and he'd help everybody. He called himself the unofficial heavyweight coach because it's all Greco. So I saw him a lot being a freshman 182 pounder. So he'd come over. So he was a coach. He wasn't the head coach. Yeah. But he was a volunteer. And then I think by the time I graduated, that's when he came back into like a assistant role.
Kael, I would love to know real quick. So when your dad's in the room, because you mentioned how he was a volunteer coach, obviously his name and, just all his accolades that we were talking about earlier, when other coaches are in the room, have you ever noticed that, if your dad's present, do other coaches kind of, are they kind of intimidated because there's a Howell, or do you find like the best coaches still get it done regardless of who's in the room?
I mean, I wouldn't say they're intimidated because, if you're coaching in Delaware and you're from Delaware, odds are you probably wrestled for him. Yeah. So I think it was an intimidation, and I'm not too positive because I was a wrestler. I wasn't paying attention to the coach's stuff. But I think they would allow them to be like, hey, like, do you want to show anything, or what should I show? He'd throw his input in, but he never took over the team. You know what I mean? Like he never acted like he was the head coach, and so I think that's the big thing was. He was just a volunteer. He's like, I just want to show wrestling. Some guys would ask him to show some stuff, and he'd show some stuff, but he never tried to take over that role from whoever it belonged to.
I love it. Yeah, it's just humility. I think it's awesome. And plus, he, doesn't demand that, which I think naturally, right? I think the best leaders can be quiet/reserved and then, asked upon for their guidance when necessary. And I'm sure Coach Harris did that. So, you're in high school, right? Freshman year. Did you crack the lineup your first year, or like, what was that like for you? You were in high school.
Kinda. So my freshman year was 2019-2020. So it was the 2020 Smyrna State Championship team, and there was hammers. And going in, I knew I was going to be behind JT Davis. He was a starter at Lehigh. He's pretty well. He almost qualified for nationals. He's really good, really good. Couple times state champ. So I knew going in, I was going to be behind him. So I went in thinking I was going to be JV my freshman year, but then. I was kind of like that in-betweener kicks, I was pretty good. I was decent enough to where JV tournaments were, I don't want to say not challenging because I don't want to put anybody down, but it was, I needed better matches. So our 95 was we didn't have really a 95 pounder, there was me, JT Davis, and a guy named Tyler Downward, and all of us walked around 190. So we all weighed in at 82, and I think most of the time it was interchangeable between me and JT. And so I remember if JT was going 82, I'd go 95. JT was going 95, I'd go 82. And then I remember we went to Ray Oliver. We were both in the 182-pound bracket, and there's one guy from McDonough that beat up on me, and I was like, yeah, well, wait till he wrestles JT. He's not going to think all Smyrna guys are like, he can beat up any Smyrna guy, but. It was definitely interesting. I feel like Coach Harris did a really good job interchanging the lineup, matching up strengths. But definitely, it was tough. It was nice being behind him. I just wish I took advantage of having a guy of that caliber in the wrestling room. That was at that time where I was letting like myself pressure on myself get high, and I was like, oh, he's gonna beat me up, so I'm just gonna let him beat me. I think one day, dude, we were wrestling live. I think the score was like 100-2. Well, I got cut twice. You know what I mean? Like he was just a hammer. So the one thing is, I wish I appreciated the guys I had in the room even more. But what you gotta do about it now?
Yeah. Well, I mean, you can use it as a learning curve. Plus,
Oh yeah. So now I always stress to the kids. I'm like, take it serious. If I'm working with like high school age kids, definitely like, like lock in, like, you got good guys in the room. You got Coach Howell, you got Coach Rob, those are the two, in my opinion, two best coaches in Delaware right now. They're building a team, and, every year they're just getting better and better. So you got two great minds like that. It's kind of hard not to like get better at least 1% every day. And then you got other guys like Sam Kowalczyk's in that room. He's a volunteer assistant. He wrestles with the guys, and he's tough. So you got a good like tough guy to drill with the great minds that are coaching you. So I tell the Smyrna guys, I was like, dude, there's no reason why you guys shouldn't be getting like at least a couple times better, but from the beginning of the season to the end.
Yeah. Yeah, Smyrna has a pretty rich history in wrestling in itself. I know just in the past decade or so, they've had a handful of multiple-time state champions. The one that comes to mind just probably in the last decade or so, because I coached high school wrestling in the early 2010-ish, and I remember Brent Fleetwood being a huge name back then, four-time state champ, and then GM
Petro.
Yeah, sorry. So
no, you're good.
He was a little bit way after my time, but I'm obviously, of course, familiar with him. Dude, at Final X,
he was a year ahead of me in high school. So him and I grew up together. He lives right down the street from where we live. I always made jokes, and I was like, dude, I believe there was like another one-time state champ. I made jokes like there's 9 state titles in this neighborhood alone. Like we should just start like a club wrestling team in this neighborhood and see how great guys can be.
You could, right? That's awesome.
Should have.
And then I think Delaware, because it's so small, I think not enough people give us credit. I mean, obviously, we're not powerhouses like PA and New Jersey, but the cool thing is we're right next to those states. So it's not like our athletes aren't getting exposed to that level of competition. Something that I overheard in conversation at Final X, and I know you'll appreciate this, where you have all these different states that wrestle, of course, and there's different, different federations, different, it's kind of like how in Delaware there's a DIAA. So I know, and I've always found this pretty bizarre, where you take Delaware. It's obviously it's a small state, but we have one state tournament, meaning there's only one division. Now there's different conferences, but they all merge in one division. But take a state like California, where they only have one division. So if you're a state champion from California, you've gone through a huge bracket. But then you look at other states, they have like you could be a state champion at your weight class for class 1A, and then there's another state champ. So I've always found that to be bizarre. What's your take on that? Because you've been around wrestling a lot more than I have, and maybe you've talked with other kids from other states, but if you're a state champ, let's say from Georgia, but you're in like a one class or like, I don't know, a different division, how does that really match up? So how do you know if you're an actual state champ or not?
I live with, go to school in PA, I live with all PA guys. And so there's there's two conferences in PA. There's AA and AAA. So, they always argue, AA state champ, AAA state qualifier, blah, blah, blah. It's like, I feel like we've all had this conversation. I don't know. I understand where they're coming from, because one, qualifications would just take way more time in a state like PA. Like I get where it's small school, big school essentially, but I guess, I don't know. I feel like if you want to play devil's advocate, why not just have like a wrestle off at the end, or something like Final X, where it's like, all right, best of 3, winner's the true state champ, whatever. But a lot of the guys on the team over here, they're like, yeah, AA sucks. And I got my one roommate's a AA guy, and he's like, AA sucks, but you got Bass, like all the McCourt guys, Faith Christian guys. He goes, these guys probably take out every AAA. So the arguments just go on. And I sit back like this, because I'm from Delaware. So I sit back and I just try not to say a word, or else I'm like, oh yeah, Delaware. And then it's just have to go on and on about,
Yeah, it's, I would say kind of like that even level playing field is if teams in high school get a chance to go to Beast of the East or, these higher competitions, and even the off-season tournaments too, because I know when you go to Fargo or other events off-season, there's really no different division, at least I don't think so. So everyone's kind of a even playing field there. So cool, man. So you start wrestling obviously in sixth grade, then you've had success, then you're a freshman, and then when did you crack the lineup? Was it like
My sophomore year. Yeah. So,
Nice.
sorry, we kind of went off topic. My freshman year,
No, it's all good.
I wrestle off for a 95 spot. I lose 2 out of 3 matches, so I'm bumped out for the postseason my freshman year. So kind of, I'd say I broke the lineup a couple times. Had a couple decent wins. My dad always tells me, the state champion, like to the guy I wrestled in the dual state finals. He pinned me earlier in the year. That's when we had another conversation about, just getting better, fighting off your back, just doing what you can for the team. So I go out, hit a nice little arm throw. I lose by 1 or 2, maybe 3, but I keep it within a decision, and then we end up winning by 2 points. So I don't think I really did anything, but my dad and other coaches are like, if you get pinned, we lose the match. You did your job. So I guess, doing your job. So I feel like I did a couple good things for the varsity lineup, but never broke it. Sophomore year, wrestled 95. Junior year, and then it was kind of just I just had the spot wherever I was going. It was just decent enough in the room, but it's just wrestling through the spot, or sorry, excuse me, I'm like out of my mind. I'm a little tired. Just not wrestle. I didn't really wrestle off much my sophomore, junior, senior year. Like if a guy wanted to, I would, but we just had trouble filling those upper weights. Like I believe it was like me and maybe one guy behind me. So I never really had trouble making the lineup the rest of the years of high school.
Yeah, what's a memorable match in high school that stands out to you? Maybe it was a big win, maybe it was a tournament, or maybe it was just that, I don't know, after you won, the whole crowd erupt, and you felt the love and support from your team and the environment.
Let me think. There's a couple matches. Again, that state finals one, it's not a glorious one because, I still finished with the loss, but
Yeah.
I feel like doing that I feel like that's just, you can't beat that, doing your job and your team wins a state title. That's pretty good. My junior year, there was one, against Milford. Milford was it's always Smyrna and Milford, so we wrestled them in the state duels, and
You guys were D1, right?
yeah. Milford came up to D1 before
Yep.
I was in high school. So it was always, we were wrestling Milford, and we were, it was a close match, but we had to pin out to win the match, and it started with me. And I feel like that was just a great moment to test, all right, pressure's building. What are you going to do? So I got out, I got the pin, thankfully, got the win. I got up, I celebrated to our crowd, and it's on YouTube somewhere, but I celebrate to the crowd. You can see Coach Harris come out, and he's a little upset that I started hitting the celebration. He's like, yo, we don't do that. We don't do that. And so, I mean, it's always fun to watch, because it's like, you do that, you get the pin, team needs you, you get the 6, at this point I'm a junior, wasn't a captain, but I was definitely one of the leaders. So, I was glad I can do that. But then I just laugh now because, Harris just, it came out in the match like, no, don't do that. Don't celebrate. We're better than that. And so he was right. Probably,
Yeah.
16 years old, you win a big match. Sometimes you just, emotions get to you. But, it was, I feel like that is a good one, but I'd have to say top match was, that state dual finals where team needs me not to get pinned. And, I did my job, and in the end, we won a state title together. So that's no better feeling than that.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I think it's cool how, obviously different sports, different, eras, you see that big moment where athletes are celebrating. And at the end of the day, it's like, I mean, you were doing what you felt was, appropriate, right? Because I'm very happy. It kind of reminds me of the whole Wyatt Hendrickson, celebration when he beat, Gable Stevenson, which I know you were there. So, I mean,
yeah, I was. Yeah, I was in Philly that year. I might have missed my Friday class that day to go watch, the tournament, but it was definitely a fun one to watch.
Yeah, real quick before we jump into your college, career and where you're at now, I think this is kind of appropriate. So when you go to the NCAA matches, tournament, it's something that I have not done yet, unfortunately. But what's that environment like? Is it motivating to be at the NCAA tournament, knowing that you're in college right now wrestling?
Well, I mean, it's definitely fun to watch. I have to preface with, I was on a college roster for a couple years, but I never wrestled. Injuries kept me out.
Yeah.
So I would, I just want to throw it out there so I'm not sounding like I'm making something seem different. No, I never competed, as much as I wanted to, I just had problems. But I mean, going to turn, it's awesome. Depending on what section you sit in, I remember one year in Oklahoma, we sat in the Iowa section, and my dad and I were just like, we can't. Like that was the year Spencer Lee got beat.
Oh yeah.
And we're sitting back, like, we just don't cheer. Like they'll boo you out of the stands. Like it's no joke to them. So it's always fun.
Really?
When you're sitting in a section that's not populated by a team, it's really fun. But sometimes like I forget how we got into the Iowa section. But it was, we just had to keep our mouth shut. When Spencer Lee lost, we just went sit right there and like couldn't say a word about it. But going to tournament's fun. It's always nice. It's back to that going around. Somebody knows Kurt. He hangs out with all of Dickie's Lockhaven buddies. They go. So Matt Avery, guys like that, like old heads. But I call them old heads. They'd probably bust me up still. So let me watch my mouth. They'll still take me down. So
yeah, no, bro, that's interesting how you talk about, when Spencer Lee got pinned, because I saw it, of course, all over the internet, and then you see, memes and stuff where his mom is,
yeah, she was right in front of us to the right, pan that camera over a little left. You see my dad and I not doing anything, not we're sitting there just not making a peep.
Yeah. Because if you do, then what? It's just not gonna.
We're gonna get booed out. Last thing you want to do is make a bunch of Iowa wrestling fans mad. That's like not something you want to go and do.
Yeah, absolutely. But no.
Before we go any further, do me a quick favor. If you're enjoying this episode, make sure you like the video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with somebody who would appreciate this conversation. That one share really does help the show grow. And if you're listening on audio, make sure to follow the podcast and leave a rating or review. It helps more people find the show, and it lets me know that you're rocking with what we're already building. All right, let's keep it going, and let's get back into this amazing conversation.
I mean, like, what a cool experience that you had a chance to do that, and with your dad. Awesome. So I know you mentioned that you haven't wrestled a college match.
Haven't competed. I've practiced. I've been on a roster for a couple of years.
Yeah, so I would love to get to know that transition from high school to college. Was that a recruiting process? Did you know that you wanted to wrestle in college?
So I didn't know I wanted to wrestle in college. I was just going to, so in high school, my dad always took me to the PA USAW state qualifier events. And at this time I was just wrestling freestyle and Greco. No thoughts about college in general, but I get approached by a coach from East Stroudsburg, and that kind of started me getting recruited. And then I got into contact with Jerry Bolin at Millersville, and there's just something about the program over here that I just, I fell in love with. Excuse me, sorry.
No, you good.
They're doing good things over here, and I just, even I was just like, yeah, Millersville's a spot. Like, that's where I want to go. So I go, and the transition, man, it's a grind. I wasn't expecting. I knew it was gonna be tough. But I wasn't expecting to be like that. That's college wrestling is really somewhere where you got to make the right decision every day of your life, or else, you're just going to slack behind. Like, I could have done better with, maintaining my body in order, so I did well, herniate a couple discs in my neck, had a little crack in a vertebrae. So that took me out, definitely could have done a better job taking care of my body, not doing that. And then, I heal up from that. I start wrestling in the summer, lock back in, and then go to my sophomore year. It's like, all right, time to lock in. And in August, I was wrestling. He's one of my best friends. His name's Danny Sinclair. We're wrestling in my garage, and he has a tough ride on top. I go to limp leg out, and then boom, tore my ACL, knocked me out for the year. And then on top of that, I just wasn't making the right decisions in the classroom. Grades suffered a bit. So this year, I took the year off. That community college. Thankfully, my grades are back up. So now we got back into Millersville. Hopefully, we can try and wrestle. If not, I tell Coach Boland all the time and all the guys, I was like, hey, man, I still believe in this program. I'll do whatever you want. Like, I just worked a wrestling tournament for them a couple weeks ago. In the fall, there's I don't know if you're familiar with Frightland, there's some place like that up here called Field of Screams, and the owner is like, hey, get the wrestlers to come volunteer your time, go scare some people, make a donation. And so my first thought was anything to help the program go around. So, I did that all fall. So I'll probably do that next year, but hopefully I can walk on, get in shape, walk on, maybe wrestle, compete. But if not, then next best thing, I'll just go into coaching a little bit earlier, do whatever I can to help out the Millersville team, because I love those guys. Those are all my boys, anything to help them will help me. So
Yeah.
just
Yeah,
in
man.
that mindset.
Yeah, I think that's awesome that you've been able to experience that transition from high school to college, if you will. And I think regardless of the results or regardless of the fact that you haven't been able to wrestle to the capacity that you're capable of, just being a part of that process is pretty cool. And any interview that I watch, especially with these top high school prospects or just high school kids in general, making that transition, is they say that when you're in a college practice room, most of the kids there are all state champs or high
Yeah.
placers back. So yeah, I think and you said so like yourself. So when you talk about living this right lifestyle, so every decision you make in college, especially if you're wrestling, can have
Mhm.
an impact on your performance. Is that what you're
Yep.
saying?
Yeah, it's like big things. Like I didn't prioritize diet. I was always when I was on the mat, I was locked in on the mat, but I didn't realize that it was off the mat stuff that was the most important. I didn't prioritize diet. My diet wasn't great, eating the bad foods in the dining hall.
It's
I
easy
wasn't, it's so easy. And what else? Just not I honestly, not wrestling extra, in college, you get mandated practices, but if you really want to excel, you just got to keep getting on the mat. I was very I don't know what the word is, it was just naive, maybe a little cockiness hit my head because I was a college wrestler, but just it was that make just decisions off the mat. I just struggled. Going to class is a big thing. I wasn't going to class. I wasn't turning in papers, and in turn that affected how much I could wrestle. Like
Yeah.
it's all I didn't realize that in college wrestling, I'd say 80% of the important stuff is off the mat, and that's the stuff you got to do right. Do your schoolwork, make sure you're studying, go to class, lock in on the diet, stuff like that, which everyone tells you when you're in high school, and it's like, hey, but eat right, and you hear it, and sometimes you're like, yeah, metabolism, this, I'm good, like stuff like that, but it's just something I didn't do, and I've facing the repercussions of it now. But I mean, to me, I feel like that just makes me a little wiser around the block. Now I know what to do. I can help some, even if I don't get back into wrestling myself. There's definitely some kids out there that will probably fall down the same road I'm in, and hopefully, as a coach, I can catch that before they go as far as I do. Before just because you see all your friends out there wrestling, and you're like, oh man, like all my roommates are out wrestling tournaments, and I'm just watching. I'm like, oh, I wish I was out there. Like it's like a woulda, coulda, shoulda. Didn't make the right decision, so you made your bed, you lie in it, but. I think now my goal is just to help kids, not go down the same road, and hopefully they can get a full 4 healthy years of college wrestling behind their belt.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you said so. I'm sorry. I think you said best yourself how you get this opportunity, right? You get the opportunity to help the next generation. And I think ultimately, I mean, I'm a firm believer in this, Kael, that our impact, I'm sorry, our lives are defined by the impact that we have on others. So whether it was through athletics or whether it's through coaching, or in this sense, I mean, look at your father. I mean, his legacy wasn't defined by, his All-American status or what he did at the highest level. I feel his legacy is still being written. And
Right.
so,
And I feel like, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. That
No,
a
you're
lot
good.
of that philosophy, that voices, come from him. Like I remember the big thing he was like is, give back. Like I wasn't the most credentialed wrestler, but I feel like I have a good amount of knowledge to where I can give back to the youth. And I was picking his brain, the past couple weeks about wrestling philosophies, because you have a resource like that. It's kind of, it'd be dumb not to use it. So I was asking him, he's like, like the big thing is just like giving back, make sure your kids love the sport, stuff like that. Like I asked him, like, what were your thoughts when you like won states, and how did you win states? Because wins, you don't want to worry about wins or losses. But he was like, like in my career, I wasn't very results based. He goes, I won a year, I'd see what the kids did well and what they didn't, and then my approach to coaching would change every year based on what the kids needed to know. And so I think that's like a big thing. The big thing he always preached was just give back to the sport. He goes, like with the knowledge that he has, and the knowledge that I've accumulated from living with him, it'd just be kind of selfish not to try and give that to the next generation down. It's a big thing is Delaware wrestling. Delaware's had some really good guys, but
Yeah.
His goal is like, and it's always fun to see because like in the off season, he's working, Smyrna, he's working with CR kids, Cape and Lopin kids, like these guys who are your rival from October to March. But then like his end goal is he wants Delaware wrestling to be, up at the top. They used to be really good, kind of fall off, but I mean, it definitely can make a comeback, and that's his goal, is just to give back to all the kids at Delaware,
Yeah. It's kind of this cycle, if you will, right?
Yeah.
I think when you have like a past class that's done really well, it's just motivation for the upcoming class. So I've no doubt it's not if, it's when you need, like, it's when Delaware gets back to that being at the top elite that it can be, for sure. And it's cool that, and now that you get to be part of that in some way. So man, like, I'm just super excited for your future as far as what you'll bring to wrestling. As we kind of close out this this awesome discussion, man, I would like to also know like what is life outside of wrestling for Kael? Like what are other things that you enjoy, like outdoors? Because I think I read that on your biography on the website that you like to go outdoors, hunting, I believe, or fishing.
Yeah, fishing. So that was I wasn't big into fishing, but COVID happened. My growing up, my brother, who he passed away a couple years ago, unfortunately. He was always into those outdoors, man. He was, fishing, hunting, hiking, and my dad and I kind of split outdoors. That, like, he's a hiker. He loves backpacking. He's hiking the Appalachian Trail. That's not me. He took me on my first backpack, and it was raining and thunderstorming. And he had one of those old school packs with like the metal bars, and I was like, yeah, I'm never doing this again. But I got into fishing. My brother and I would fish during COVID, and then when he passed, fishing, kind of just took a new meaning for me now. Just is how it's how I feel closer to him.
Sure.
You gotta do those things. So every time I catch a fish, I'll let him know. I'll be like, I'll take a picture and I'll keep it. I'll whatever, just tell him I caught it. But fishing's a big one. Just hanging out with.
I want to take a second to say thank you to everybody who supports Kumite Lifestyle. Whether you've watched one episode or you've been here since the beginning, I appreciate you. This show has grown because of the people who listen, watch, comment, share, and tell others about it. If you want to support even more, visit kumitelifestyle.com. You can check out the latest episodes, shop the merch, connect with us, and stay updated on everything we have coming next. This is bigger than just a podcast. It's a community. And I'm grateful that you're a part of it. Let's get back into this amazing conversation.
My friends, I just love hanging out. Definitely a lot of like watching wrestling too, but we got in this lately here. We've gotten into pickleball.
Yeah.
Pickleball's, dude, it gets intense, just hanging out with all those people, just being in the moment, being in the present, you don't want to, wrestling's important to me, but I don't want it to be my everything. I want to have a life, outside, friends, pickleball, fishing, the goal is, education major, I want to finish that out. I want to get a master's in mental health psychology, and I just, want to help kids like my brother, so they don't have to. No sibling has to feel the way I did. So the end goal is just be a school psychologist and help kids out, man. That's the true passion, is just helping people out, making sure they're happy.
I love it, man. That's cool that you've had the chance to explore other options, and also while giving, not respect, but in memory of your brother, of course.
Yeah.
So you mentioned pickleball, and I was I don't know. So I was hanging out with some friends this past weekend, and we were kind of, because I've seen people do it. It's actually pretty popular, down at the beach area. So I've never picked up. I think it's called a paddle, but
it's confusing, man. Like there's like a rule.
It's kind of like tennis, right? But
yeah. So the rule that gets me is there's a little
kitchen
spot out. Yeah, the kitchen. That's what my friend, old roommate of mine, Colin. We played with him, and he was a stickler. He's like, yeah, no, you're in the kitchen, and we're like, what kitchen? This is a court, and it's just like a whole thing. So I'm not good at it in the slightest, but I like to pick it up. It's definitely a fun thing when you got all your friends. It's a nice day outside. Just go play some pickleball or something.
Heck yeah, dude. That's awesome. Kael, man, this has been awesome. It's been an honor to have you on, and your dad, of course. So I appreciate you hopping on. So, real quick before we exit out, I would like to give you an opportunity to share with the viewers if anyone wants to get in touch with you, or if they want to know a little bit more about wrestling, or a little bit more about you as a person. How can someone reach out to you?
Yeah. So I have Instagram. 1 second. Let me figure out my handle here.
I think it's just your name, I believe.
Yeah, so it's just my name, Kael Howell, spelled out. DM me. I'm always down for private lessons, just getting the sport. I'd also like to shout out, if it's okay, a friend of mine, Danny Sinclair. He's doing great things up in northern Delaware, so you can hit him up. What's his handle real quick? Sorry about this. Just Danny _ Sinclair 302. Send him a DM if you're in northern Delaware. It's a great guy to go. He loves the sport, studies. He picks my dad's brain just as much as I do. So, it's just a great guy up north. Hit me up. You got Northern Delaware Wrestling Academy. It's great coaching there. And then, of course, the Howell System Camp's always a great fun camp in the summer. It's always, in my opinion, one of the best camps in the country because you got great clinicians and wrestling, and then you can also have a little fun, hopefully get a camp championship. But definitely all those spots are, if you want to get better at wrestling but also have some fun, those are definitely the spots to go to.
Yeah, absolutely. And I appreciate you letting the viewers know. And again, for those watching, if you're watching for the first time on YouTube, make sure you subscribe, and you can also listen to us anywhere in the world if you're on Spotify, Apple Podcast, and Amazon as well. And then, of course, you can also go to kumitelifestyle.com. One last thing, Kael, and you kind of touched on it when you gave a shout out to your friend Danny, but is there anyone else that you would like to give a quick shout out to before we exit out?
I'm trying to think. I got so many friends, but they're all like PA, like far. Like Danny Sinclair is doing great. He's doing good things. He told me he wanted to go out in privates and start coaching. Pretty much that. I mean, Northern Delaware Wrestling. Ryan Howe. Cousin of mine. He's doing really good things for the youth wrestling. No, I think that's about it person wise for because I don't know about your base, but I'm assuming it's mostly like Delaware, Maryland, like the Delmarva area. So I was just giving out guys that are around the area. But any of those guys, Danny Sinclair is a great one to learn from.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so Kumite Lifestyle, it's kind of branched off. It's martial arts from all walks of life. I've had people on from Bahrain. I've had folks from Canada on. So
okay, and even like, it doesn't have to be like wrestlers. Like if you're into jiu-jitsu or anything like that, and you just want to learn some wrestling, like I'm always down. I got my family's house in Smyrna, so I can just always find a place to stay. And, if you need me to come down anywhere, I can help out with some grappling. Danny Sinclair also, like anybody so it doesn't have to be just wrestlers looking to get better. It can just be anybody. I'm always ready to teach them wrestling.
Perfect. And then I did have one last thing. If you could recommend 3 people for this podcast, who would you recommend?
Oh, 3 people. Okay.
Top 3 that come to mind.
I'd have to go Danny Sinclair. No, I've been saying his name a lot, but he's state champ, 2-time state finalist. Won some pretty good matches in the college level. He definitely knows what he's talking about. That's the one guy. Let's see who else. I can't say my dad because he already did it. I'm trying to think.
Yeah.
I would say if you want to stick with the house, my cousin Zach.
Yeah.
The most knowledgeable person in wrestling I've ever met. If you ask him about when he was a kid, a bunch of wrestlers in Delaware, he'll know. So he's the freestyle and Greco coordinator at the Howell camp, knowledgeable wrestler. So I'd have to say he's probably up there at 2. And then let's see. You could always interview. Oh, do you see? This is tough now because now I'm in my last spot and I don't want to take up too much of your time.
No, man, you're good, dude.
It's a thinker. All right. I don't know. I don't want to give. I'd give another Howell, but I feel like I want you to branch out.
I'm all for it, dude, because the Howells have had a great impact on wrestling. So it's whoever you feel would be a good fit for the podcast, whether it's a family member or not. So we got Danny. We have Zach
Howell. I'll just keep it in the family. Ryan Howell is also a good one to do the podcast. He's running a youth program. Pretty successful youth program too. They're always coming back with some kind of trophy. So he'd definitely be a good guy to talk about how it's like coaching youth and what the process is for that. So I'll keep it in the family with Ryan and Zach, and then I'll throw Danny Sinclair out there too. Okay, he's practically family. He's at the house every Christmas, so cool. He's practically family enough.
Yeah, we'll see if we can get those guys on. I'm sure we can make it happen.
Okay, yeah, man, I can get you in touch with a couple of them. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I would love that. So maybe off the air things we can definitely get that set up.
Yeah.
But Kael, this was awesome, man. I appreciate your time. I appreciate you hopping on. I mean,
Thanks for having me, man. It was a great experience. Some dad lore I can tell my kids one day. I was on a podcast.
Yeah. Now it's cool that we, as they say, things don't happen by accident, right? So
Right.
I'm glad we had the opportunity to connect in person at Final X, and then giving you the opportunity to share your story. Just kind of this quick snapshot, if you will. And again, for those watching, make sure you guys subscribe. Follow us. And then, stay tuned for other upcoming interviews coming up, man. But Kael, hope you enjoy the rest of your day, man.
That's another episode in the books. I want to thank today's guests for being a part of the show and bringing real value to the conversation. And to everybody watching or listening, I appreciate you more than you know. There are a lot of great things you could be doing right now with your time. So the fact that you spent some time here, it means a lot. Make sure you subscribe, follow, share, and visit KumiteLifestyle.com to support the show and check out our amazing merch in the shop. Remember, every story matters, every conversation has value, and we're going to keep building one episode at a time. Thank you for tapping in. I'll catch you on the next one.